one claim to fame from a research point of view was that we did discover that men have higher ambient levels of SAMe than women. And that's actually true in rats as well as humans. So here again, that seems to be a mammal-wide phenomenon. And as you're probably aware, rats actually can get depressed. So we therefore, realized, well, maybe there's something to this. The incidence of depression in women is about 3 times that of the incidence of depression in men. And they're out there wandering around with low levels of SAMe. So the next thing you do is you give SAMe to people, and hey, it works. There were very, very strong studies in the European literature which compared SAMe, which at the time was actually given intravenously and intramuscularly, to clomipramine, which is, I'm sure you're aware, is an incredibly powerful tricyclic antidepressant. The best of the best, so to speak. And SAMe was equivalent in efficacy to clomipramine. Now, later on, studies of the oral preparation, which probably isn't absorbed as efficiently, which is one of the things we need to think about when we make a product like this, and so the more recent studies have not been as powerfully effective. But a number of studies have indicated that in this population that we're talking about, people who are on an SSRI who aren't getting better, you give SAMe to that population, and 50% of them get better. So
that's
that was
wild.
That was
how
the
much
first.
better is better?
Well, most times when you get that, you're dealing with a statistical phenomenon, and as I'm sure if your depression score goes down by 3 points, then you've demonstrated clinical efficacy, even though that may make you only a little less depressed. In these kind of cases, it's the usual 50-50. About half the responders are robust responders. They really feel good. The other half feel kind of better, but it's like, no great shakes. So that's the case with SAMe. Second item, L-methylfolate. And this was something which, I had nothing to do with, but I was following with great interest over the 90s and the early 2000s. And you can do the same thing with methylfolate. You add 15 milligrams of methylfolate to a failed SSRI trial, and you get a 50% response rate on top of what you would have expected. And the theory on that one is fascinating because 70% of people with depression have a genetic defect called the MTHFR polymorphism. And that particular defect prevents them from converting dietary folate to brain permeable methylfolate. And so that group of patients are probably the main beneficiaries of giving people exogenous methylfolate, which goes directly, L-methylfolate, which goes directly into the brain. And interestingly, even in people without the polymorphism, people with what we call high inflammation depression, people who are obese, have elevated levels of SED-rate, C-reactive protein, and such things, those people are also responders to methylfolate for reasons that are not entirely clear to us, except that it probably has some, anti-inflammatory qualities. So that's number 2 of our 4 items. Number 3 is fish oil. And here again, a colleague of mine at McLean Hospital, Andy Stoll, did a lot of studies indicating the efficacy of adjunctive fish oil to people with bipolar disorder. And he used massive amounts of fish oil, 6 grams a day. And it turns out that, yes, there is a beneficial effect of fish oil when you add it to mood stabilizers. Subsequent studies by my colleagues at Mass General, who also did the methylfolate studies and the early SAMe studies, also indicated that you could add, in particular, EPA-rich fish oil to people on SSRIs. Surprise, surprise, 40 to 50% of them get better. So we got 3 items, each of which, is contributing a little extra oomph to this group, which is mildly treatment resistant to start with. And that's the 3 that are together. Nobody's looked at the vitamin D piece, again, because the vitamin D is so ubiquitous. I just give it to my patients anyway. But that is how I got to the formulation. So we put out the first patent in 2000. We applied for the first patent in 2009. We got an icky patent in 2013, which would have allowed people to add vitamin D and compete with us. So we didn't like that. And we finally got a definitive patent in 2017 um, where nobody can add anything. If these three items are in it, then this is your intellectual property. And again, it's important because this is now something which we have. It's investor bait, so to speak, for people who are interested in trying to get behind something which could be a really important new technology. And the medical food piece, I think, is relevant because there really is a good argument that if you think about it, if SAMe levels are affected by ingesting SAMe, and if that is a nutritional deficit associated with depression, which it seems like it is, then SAMe is a medical food. Methylfolate, similarly, you get the genetic deficit involved that you can't make up for by glomming giant mounds of folic acid containing vegetables. You got it. Fish oil is a little trickier. I think it's a legitimate medical food because if you were to ingest a gram and a half of EPA in particular per day, you need to have a slab of salmon every single day of your life. I mean, that's enough to, after a while, just drive you running from the dining room. So that's the rationale for the medical food designation.
Now, are these foods naturally found in the types of diets where, when we're talking about nutritional control, like I was just listening to a podcast from the CMAJ, and they were talking about a study which was showing, in terms of SSRI versus following the Mediterranean diet, there was the equal effect in this particular study. Like, are these sorts of, like, the SAMe and the methylfolate and the vitamin D, like, is this all what's found in those types of foods in the Mediterranean diet?
Not in the amounts that are commensurate to what we're giving people. I think there's something positive to be said about the Mediterranean diet. Certainly, the prevalence of the omega threes is a big deal. If you include even the non-animal forms of omega threes, your olive oils and things of that sort. SAMe itself is really not particularly prevalent in food items. Um, and the methylfolate is not, even though folic acid is in a lot of things, including that diet. But if you think about it, if you're one of the 70% who can't metabolize oral folate to get into your brain, you can eat as much of that stuff as you want. It's not going to do you a lot of good.
It just go right through you. It's not bioavailable.
Right, right.